Welcome to M-Dash, the healthcare podcast that gives you pause. I'm your host, Kim Aquavita. Today's episode is Uncovered, featuring Sara Quin. So welcome to the show, Sara. How are you?
I'm fantastic. Thank you so much for having me.
So why don't we start by just hearing a little bit about you and what some of the words are that you use to describe your identities.
My identities. Well, so I am a 37-year-old woman who identifies as queer. And I love referring to myself in that way. I sort of came to queer late in my 20s because I had sort of adopted at the time what was more traditional, was more traditionally labeled lesbian or gay, but usually that was because other people had called me that, and I sort of felt like, okay, I guess that's what I am. Queer I love because I think it sort of addresses my broader identity, not just my sexuality, but sort of my how I see myself both internally and externally, as a woman, but also as a gay person.
I like the word queer too. It's interesting, the more that we use the word queer, I'm having to educate straight people that it's not a word that they can use to describe queer people, that it's, which is really funny. I never thought that I would have to say that to healthcare professionals, but I was asked just recently, so that word's okay for us to use now? And I'm like, yeah, no, I can use it, but you can't. You can't use it to label someone else.
Sure. It's interesting too, because the flip side for me is that I actually find myself having to sort of have lengthy conversations with other gay people about the word, because especially for the older generation of gay people, especially some of my friends who are just identifying happily as lesbian, the queer it has this really loaded history, and I really get that. I think I tend to be sort of more of a contrarian and an activist, and I like ruffling feathers, and I like to be somewhat, I don't know, not controversial, but I don't mind, stirring up a debate. And for me, queer feels really like it's not a word that other people choose for me. It's a word I choose for myself. And I like sort of forcing people to be uncomfortable when I talk using that word. And so many of my older lesbian friends are like, almost triggered by the word. And, they're sort of, they have these really long histories with it and being called it in a derogatory way. And so it's funny for me because I really feel like I'm taking the word back. I'm always saying, like, this is my word now. This is not your word.
That's a great way to describe it. Now, I know you've done a ton of interviews about what it's like to be a lesbian, and you're really active in work around queer healthcare and queer health access, but I've never heard anyone interview you about what it's like to be a famous person seeking healthcare. And in my head, so the podcast, I basically interview people who I really want to know stuff about. Questions, like I interviewed someone who was an ex-nun, and I was really curious, like, what's it like being a nun and going to the gynecologist? And they were like, no one's ever asked me that. So I'm curious, like, what is it like to be you seeking and accessing healthcare? And do you worry about things like, I don't know, like if I were going to the gynecologist and I were a celebrity, I would be, and this is not something I normally think about regularly, but if I were a celebrity and I'm going to the gynecologist, I wouldn't have just the normal worries, I think, about going to the gynecologist. I would also have that additional layer of, are people there going to leak info, or
Right.
is something about my vagina going to end up on TMZ or whatever? So,
Well,
you worry about that, or is that just in my...
Well, right now I'm worrying about it. But,
you weren't worried until I asked you this.
I was worrying about it before this conversation. No, well, it's interesting because my relationship with the doctor really changed when I became 18. So, I'm Canadian, so my experience, I don't know exactly how parallel it is with my American, the American listeners and people out there. But I saw a pediatrician until I was 18. He was the doctor I saw since I was born. And it was fairly like, sit on the table. I'm going to listen to your heartbeat. I'm going to look in your ears and your mouth. And, it was pretty, I don't remember having any, I don't remember even feeling uncomfortable going to the doctor. I loved my doctor. He was super fun. And the experience was so integrated into my life that I don't even remember thinking about it. It just was a thing that happened. And then additionally, because healthcare is just free. I mean, it's like paid for by tax dollars, but I mean, you are essentially, you as a Canadian are entitled to go to the doctor, and there's sort of no anxiety or fear about payment. I don't remember any kind of anxiety around the doctor. I mean, obviously, if I wasn't feeling well, maybe I did, maybe I was worried about what was wrong or whatever, but I just remember it being a very relaxed experience. And then I turned 18, and the pediatrician sort of politely suggested that we find a different doctor that would be able to sort of meet whatever needs we needed as adult women. And it's so funny to me now because I'm like, well, I got my period when I was 13. So, I mean, it probably was a conversation I should have been having many years earlier, but like it was the 90s. I don't know. I don't know what to tell you. But like that's when everything shifted for me. And I remember seeing a doctor and having to get my first physical, and the idea of getting a physical was utterly terrifying to me, and the experience was fine. And I remember get like figuring out what a pap smear was and like all of these things. And I remember just, it's like as quickly as that one experience, I was like, okay, well, this is the thing now I dread. This is the thing, like not the pap smear, but like just going to the doctor. I was like, okay, now I hate this. I don't want to go. Like it sort of took on this really adult, intense thing, and it was almost like I just adopted the sort of cultural, like the cultural accepted thing of like, oh God, the doctor, right? It's the worst. Who wants to do that? And have this person touching you and prodding you and poking you and scraping you. And I really, that was sort of my relationship with it right from the get-go. In terms of my like visibility as a public person, I lived in Montreal until a handful of years ago, and my doctor, who I saw, regularly every year, every 2 years, I swear to God, she did not remember me. So it was like every time, you're going to think I'm making this up, but every time I would go to the doctor, I would feel like I was introducing myself to her. I'd be like, hello, I don't know if you're familiar with me. I'm covered head to toe in tattoos underneath my clothing. I know I think to myself, I'm extremely memorable regardless of my occupation. But she just was always kind of like, and so you date men, or I was always coming out. Like it was like my
Wow.
doctor had amnesia, and I just stuck with it because I sort of felt bad for her. I just was like, she's a great doctor, but I do have to reintroduce myself every single time. So I guess what I'm saying is that if she was the kind of person who would leak information to TMZ about my vagina, she did not do it because she didn't remember it.
Well, and it sounds like she didn't remember that vagina was attached to someone who was a celebrity or someone named Sarah, like each time.
Exactly. No, she was totally not aware. But in since then, I'm living in Vancouver, and I have a personal, like, my doctor seems to recognize me, and also my mother and sister go there too. So I think that there's definitely more. It's extra memorable now. Yeah, she's like seen the whole family of vaginas. But I think, the truth is that I'm older now. I'm 37, and I it's not just my doctor who I've had to consider in these situations. I've seen, over the last 20 years, I've seen therapists, I've been in couples therapy, I have a dentist, I have a business manager and a lawyer, and I have a chiropractor and an acupuncturist. I mean, I see a host of people in my life in many different areas, and I sort of have a network of people that I trust, and I'm very lucky that nothing too um, nothing too offensive or outrageous. No one's ever sort of like, trampled my privacy or my anonymity. I do have the occasional like wander into a waiting room, and someone's like, "Aren't you in that band?" And then I've totally had the moment where the doctor or the receptionist is like, here's your ultrasound for that weird ovary thing or whatever, and you're just like, great, perfect, But I guess the good news is that we all have to go to the doctor. So there's actually there's this sort of wonderful equilibrium of like, we're all on the same level. Everything is in balance. I'm not on stage with Katy Perry right now. I'm just getting my ovary looked at,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting because prepping for this interview, I was curious about like how often stuff is leaked, and just looking around, not about you, but just in general about celebrities.
Jesus.
No, good news.
Where do I send the invoice for all of this intel?
fortunately, it looks like most healthcare professionals, they really do keep things, take it really seriously, their legal and ethical obligation to respect privacy. But every so often people are talking on TMZ or some other website about celebrities. The one thing I did see that came up over and over again, and not just about you, but like every celebrity, is if you gain or lose a pound, everyone is like hyper focused on it.
Mm.
What does it feel like? Like I know when I, because it always goes back to me, when I go to the doctor, if I've gained 3 pounds, I'm not really looking forward to standing on the scale, or 5 pounds. But I'm not worried about anyone going, man, Kim's gained 5 pounds. There goes her singing career. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
Because
Yeah.
I'm nobody.
Yeah.
Does it cause anxiety for you how much attention is paid to your bodies as public figures?
It's weird. Like the truth is that I'm 37 and we started in the music industry at like 18. And between those years, the amount of weight I've lost or gained has been fairly negligible. It might look like a lot to someone else, but I know it's not. So it's not weight hasn't ever been something that I've struggled with in either direction. And I think because of that, I don't necessarily like Tegan and I will see like a horrible, wretched photo of ourselves. And I think where we'll end up focusing a lot of our energy is, oh God, I hate, why did they take that picture? Or, oh, I look like I'm bald, or, oh my God, my face, what is wrong with it? Or whatever, I think we sometimes will tease and say like, oh God, I look like I put on 30 pounds or something. But like, because we don't struggle with weight, I think, it's meant that I haven't necessarily been as impacted by the way people I don't know, so carelessly will discuss bodies.
Mm-hmm.
I will say that during a fairly a really just a tough time in my life in maybe like about 10 years ago, I was going through a breakup and I did lose about 10 pounds. And I remember, and it was like a lot of weight on my frame. I weigh about 100 and at the time, maybe 101 pounds. I was
Yeah,
like,
you're tiny.
it was substantial. The 10 pounds really looked like a lot. And what was so interesting to me was how many compliments I got. It was like, oh my God, you look so thin right now. Or like, I remember, um, Tegan and I we have large breasts. We are quite, if we're for our frame, the sort of like contrast of our frame and our breasts is maybe somewhat hidden or obscured by the way we dress or the way that we hold ourselves or whatever it is. But I remember, at the time, losing enough weight that I actually felt, oh, I'm like sort of not even as top heavy as I've felt in the past. And I remember I started to wear, thin, like smaller clothing, and people were just like, wow, you look amazing. Like, and I was like, I'm extremely depressed and I'm 10 pounds underweight,
Right.
And I was
But
like,
you've never looked better, right?
people were like, you look fabulous. And I just remember thinking then, like, wow, this is the worst. This is truly, truly my rock bottom, my lowest moment in my life. And I've never felt more confident in my body, which is,
Isn't that weird?
it's terrible. It's terrible. And, you know, I think about that a lot, and I try not to talk about my body the way that the way I think about my body in my brain. A lot of times I only think about it in my brain because I could say a lot of mean things about my own body. So I guess I just don't really buy into the other things people say about me because I'm already beating up on myself a lot anyways. So, yeah, I don't know. And but I do know that this topic is a big one for not just for women. I have a lot of queer male friends and even straight male friends, who are in the public eye, and this is a huge problem. And the way that we talk about, public bodies it's really disturbing. And the way that we're photoshopped constantly. I mean, the
Mm-hmm.
amount of work that goes into making us look the way we look in magazines and in photos, that are, whatever, official photographs, official publicity photos. I mean, we basically have unblemished, perfect, line-free skin, and we can nip and tuck and liquefy when we don't like the way our hip looks or the way my thigh looks or whatever. And you start to think that's what I look like. And then you see someone's photo from, the photo pit from below the stage with bad lighting, and you think, oh my God, is that what I look like? It's all distorting. All of it is.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I imagine when you go to see a healthcare provider, especially if it's the first time, if they know you from the public eye, they know photoshopped fabulous you. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? So when they see you for the first time, they're seeing you. And I don't know. I just
I mean,
always imagine.
I think that about I think that about going to the coffee shop in the morning. I mean, it doesn't, like, the things I do the most regularly, like I go to yoga, I get coffee. Yesterday I was in Barney's helping my mom shop for an outfit, and I just kept catching glimpses of myself in the mirror, and I looked horrible, and to myself. Like, I was like, oh my,
Oh,
I was like not wearing any makeup. I have my period, like whatever. And I was like, yeah, no, thank God no one, thank God that I can blend in. I don't think anyone in the Barney's was like, aware of me. Or like last week I was flying from Montreal to LA, and I'm not wearing any makeup. I have my hair up in a ponytail. I'm like wearing like a comfy crappy outfit, and someone on the plane boarding the plane is like, excuse me, are you from that band? Like, can I take a picture with you? And I'm like, and all I can think is not like, oh, I'm so famous. I'm getting a selfie. I'm thinking, oh my God, I'm going to look horrible in this photo. And then also there's this sort of like 10 minutes of embarrassment after the person has moved on, because I think everyone on this plane is thinking, her, that
and
girl,
now they're judging you.
they're judging me, like, that girl, someone who someone else wants to get a selfie with. My God, burn that photo. Like, I have a terrible inner voice, and it's weird, actually. At the doctor, I feel a lot more comfortable than in a lot of other places, because I think there is this sense of like, this person sees us, sees human beings when they're at their most vulnerable. They've been stripped of their clothing and put
Interesting.
into a smock, and they're sitting in a weird sterile room under fluorescent lights, and they're about to say, I have this weird pain in my hip, or I have this weird thing, or whatever it is. So it's like, I actually sort of feel kind of, I sort of hate going to the doctor, but I also feel extremely comfortable being uncomfortable there.
That's interesting. Well, there's a code of conduct between patient and clinician, whether it's a doctor, nurse practitioner, massage therapist. There's this understanding that you're there for their help, and
Yeah.
they're obligated to keep things private. As you were talking about the airport, it's funny. I flew up to Boston, and I saw Jessica Hullum, who I love,
Love Jessica.
last week. And but every time I fly through Reagan National, which is like 5 minutes from my house, I am misgendered every time. And I've been running this experiment to see what it is that's making it happen. And I thought, well, maybe it's because I'm not wearing lipstick and I'm flat chested. So I thought, well, maybe it's that. So this last time I wore lipstick, and still, as soon as I went in, it was like, yes, sir, yes, sir. It's like, oh my
Really?
God. Yeah, every time. It's because I don't have any breasts because I had a mastectomy and I didn't get reconstruction.
Yeah.
And when I travel, I'm usually wearing like a t-shirt. And so I look like a dude.
Huh.
But it's funny because I'm nobody, right? Like, it doesn't matter if I'm misgendered every time. And I don't, for me, because I'm very clear that I'm a woman, and I'm comfortable with that, for me, being misgendered doesn't bother me. It's more odd.
Yeah.
But if I were you and I wasn't wearing makeup, like, you know,
But
I don't know.
it's really okay. So it's really interesting to me that as you're saying this, because I realize that um, I go through periods of my life where, I mean, I sort of feel like my identity has gone through many different evolutions. But when I have my hair short, and this really began, I mean, my first haircut where I got all of my hair chopped off, I was 5. So this has been happening for 32 years, but I've been misgendered a trillion times. And it's interesting, as I've spent a lot of time thinking about this, because um, I did want to be a boy, when I was a little kid. I mean, that's what I wanted. I didn't have any clue or understanding of what it meant to be transgender. I just knew that I wanted to be a boy. It felt like a struggle for me. When my mom let me and Tegan cut our hair, I felt so much better. My mom was extremely supportive of us shopping. Um, we shopped in the boys section, and dressed quite. I don't even think we dressed like boys. I think we dressed in a very neutral, sort of like, we weren't girly. But we also weren't wearing like shirts with like trucks and dinosaurs on them either. Like, we were sort of like we just kind of like existed in this kind of middle zone. And I felt really happy there. I was so excited when I was sort of allowed those choices. And yet when I would be misgendered, which happened to me all the time, I would feel shame. And a lot of times the shame for me was watching other people realize their mistake. And
Wow.
and that's been happening to me my whole life. Most recently it happened to me, I guess it was about 2007 or 2008. No, it was 2008 or 2009. I cut my hair really short. Like I like had it shaved mostly, and then I had sort of like a bit of a fringe in the front. And I got misgendered all the time, but especially in airports. And I don't know what it is about airports, but it's like I was constantly called sir. I was constantly called Mr. And there was this one specific incident when I was coming home from India. I was really sick and I was very thin. I had lost, again, like I was really sick, and I had lost probably like 5 pounds or 6 pounds on the trip. Like, I mean, I was
Oh.
really, really ill. And I remember I was disoriented in LA. I was connecting to New York and I missed my flight, and I sort of like ran to the door and I started knocking on the door to go to the airplane, and this woman came up from behind me and was like, sir, you can't do that. And I turned around and I was like, I know it just closed. Can I please get on the plane? And she was like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I thought I saw your short hair and I thought you were, and I was like, don't worry about that. Just get on the plane. Like, I'll deal with that stuff later. Like, it was so interesting. But yeah, it's so weird because I really enjoy looking androgynous and I really enjoy looking masculine sometimes. And yet I can't deny that it sort of throws me into a confusing spiral in my brain when I'm misgendered.
Yeah, it's funny because when I after I had my mastectomy, I was like, you know what, I don't want reconstruction just because I had had large breasts before, and they're always in the way,
Oh,
like you're
the
camping
worst.
or whatever,
Worst.
and so I was like, yeah, I don't think I want to get new boobs.
Yeah.
Like I'm good. But the added upside was it's really nice to be able to choose to dress androgynous.
Yeah.
And so that's been interesting. And it's also been interesting to me to watch how often people's eyes go to your chest
Oh,
to look for a gender marker,
wow.
like when they're not really sure. And I never really noticed people looking at my chest before.
Yeah.
Um, maybe they weren't. Maybe it wasn't that spectacular. It wasn't much to look at, but I notice it now. So
Yeah.
I don't know, it's kind of cool.
It's fa-
Okay. So,
it's
oh, sorry.
fascinating.
Go
I mean, I
ahead.
could talk about boobs forever just because I've had such a hateful relationship with my own that it's it's so interesting to it's so interesting to think that so many of us struggle with a body part, like a body part that you just
Mhm.
kind of have. And then, to think like our mom had breast cancer, and we talk about this a lot because she also has sort of had a challenging relationship with her chest over the years. And now that she's had breast cancer, she's really like, she's still kind of mean to her boobs, but she'll be like, oh, she'll like sort of follow up. She'll like, even yesterday at Barney's, we're like, oh, boobs ruin everything. Like, wrecks all of our silhouettes, like when we put clothes on, that we just want to be flat. But then I can hear my mom sort of like follow it up quickly with like but I am glad I'm healthy. And it's like, I feel like she's telling her boobs like, thank you, for still being here or something. And I'm
Yeah,
like,
she's trying to give them a gentle shout
yeah.
out so they
she's
don't
like,
get that.
she's like, not your fault, it's not your fault.
But you know what's funny though? Without boobs, it also ruins the clothing silhouettes. I can't wear shirts that are really made for women because they look depressing. That's the only way I can describe it. When you see a shirt that has darts and they're just like empty, right? There's
Fair
this
enough.
emptiness.
Fair
Yeah.
enough.
And so, yeah, there's some things that I'm just like, oh man, it just looks bad. So I think we can't really win when it comes to boobs, I think is the takeaway message there.
Good
So,
takeaway
was there
message.
ever a time when being famous made getting healthcare awkward for you? Like a situation, either because you got recognized or because a fan, like a time where being famous became a factor?
It's funny. It's like, I mean, for myself, and again, I've been really fortunate. I've had fairly, just like, I go every year and a half or 2 years and get like a full physical. I like my doctor. I have a I don't like going to the doctor, but it's like I've been pretty healthy. I haven't had anything too dramatic or too scary happen to me. So it's hard because I really, I would be stretching if I was going to give you
That's good.
a story. It is. I feel extremely grateful and lucky for that. Um, the truth is that where it's been difficult for me is um, other people's health. We've had, um, like I mentioned earlier, my mom had cancer, and um, I've had people in my life who have been ill and in the hospital, and I've been in the hospital with people who are dying, and it's my anonymity and my privacy in those times has been somewhat um there have been times where I know people recognize us, or and it's a weird sort of like out of body experience to be suffering through a terrible loss, or like be in the hospital with someone who is dying and in their last moments, and you're sort of also slightly out of body thinking about, oh, other people around here know that this is happening to me and to my family, and that's this extra layer that I don't like being present and thinking about.
Mm.
And it's confusing because it's like I think of myself almost as two people. I think of myself as just me and normal, and just this is my life, and I'm just doing all the same things that every other person does. But there is this kind of sometimes this performance of like, oh, now I'm being watched living my life in this way. And whether it's like I'm eating dinner and I can tell, oh, this table of people are watching me have dinner with my friends or my girlfriend or whatever. It happens all the time, but it's specifically around healthcare and around things to do with with being at the doctor or being at a hospital or being somewhere like that. Yeah, I definitely feel like that can be an added layer of anxiety and stress. And I can sometimes, those are moments that I definitely feel like, oh, I just wish that I didn't have to even think about that.
I mean, I think it would be traumatic to be grieving um, the loss or the impending loss of someone you love in the hospital and have to worry not only about people looking at you, but just that whole you can't be raw and yourself and ugly cry without,
Yeah.
like
Yeah. Oh, I mean,
I can't I
y-
can't imagine what that would be like.
it's this sort of added thing that I think we forget sometimes when we are in public spaces and we see people we recognize, who we do not know. I think that boundary that is in place that makes most of us feel like even though we are constantly surrounded by people, there is a certain kind of perimeter of space that is your space. That's often broken when you are a familiar or famous person. And most of the time it doesn't bother me, if I'm in a store or I'm eating dinner or I'm in an airport. I mean, for me, most of the time, to have someone come up and recognize me or want a photograph, it's sort of on a scale of like, oh, that's so sweet, to like, okay, I'm mildly annoyed or I'm self-conscious and I don't want to have to take a photo with you at 7 in the morning on an airplane. But like, that's usually the spectrum, is kind of like, you know sort of touched to like mildly annoyed. That's where you can kind of mostly find me. But when you are, yeah, like, I mean, we lost a family member a few years ago, and we were in Asia and we had to fly back, and it was, the whole trip was just, I mean, we were just like devastated, and we were on our way back from tour. We were exhausted, and we were going to a hospital to say goodbye to someone who we loved dearly. And that was so tremendously traumatizing. And then people come up to you and they're like, oh my God, are you guys those twins? Like, can I get a photo?
Oh,
And you're just like, what do I do? Like, those are not things that, you feel almost protective of the person who's coming up to you, because you just want to be like, oh my God, what you if you knew where we were really at, you would feel terrible. So I mean, we actually kind of slip into this mode of like, okay, I'll just take the picture, and we don't share what's happening. And I mean, that happens a lot with our career in general. I mean, there have been times where I'm sure that if we were to just be like, hey guys, I know we just released our new single and everything looks like it's going swimmingly, but we're actually dealing with this like, profound loss, or, this terrible thing, or, you know, call Virgin Calgary and get us on the radio. And also, one of my family members is terminally ill and in hospice. Like, it's just, it's like
wow.
you're kind of always balancing these things. And it's, it's, um, it's just something that I tread gently when I talk about it publicly, because I'm just like, I don't need anyone to be like, oh no, I feel so sorry for you. We all go through this stuff. But I think we forget sometimes that famous people also have people die in their lives, or have
Right.
breakups or are having eating disorders, whatever it is. Like, we sort of treat them like they are void of the feelings and the sensitivities that we all have.
Well, and it's so I wish that there were some way, like, a restaurant has a sign on the front that says like open or
Yeah.
closed. It's too bad that it's too bad that celebrities can't have a sign that people would respect, which is like,
Yeah.
I'm on right now and I'm not. Um, and sadly, even if there were such a sign, people probably wouldn't respect it.
I
Um,
mean, this is true. And, Tegan and I talk about this a lot because as twins, since we were little kids, I'm extremely familiar with this problem and this sort of conundrum because people have been doing this to me since I was little. This is not like a thing that came when we started our career. This is a thing that happened to us when we were in strollers because people felt that they could come up and say, "Oh my God, are they twins?" And like my mom has stories about us at the mall and that it became such a hassle that when they would take us to the mall, my dad would take one of us and my mom would take one of us and we would sort of split up because it was just so overwhelming because people would touch us, people would try to pick us up,
oh,
people would invade our space all the time. And so it is such an it's such a it's I've been doing at 30 for 37 years I've been trying to manage other people breaking into my personal space. And so um I think there is a part of me that's like uh, good at managing when I want people to come up to me and when I don't. I make myself extremely small in public spaces. I
hmm.
try really hard to be invisible. I loved living in New York City because I felt like there were so many people everywhere all the time, and I loved feeling like no one. I loved feeling like I was just another person. And um and I believe that you can sort of make yourself smaller energetically. And that has been something that I feel is like a tool or like a like a sort of I don't know, like a protective cloak or something. Like, I don't think we're that recognizable because we don't want to be. I could like put on like a crazy outfit and, dress super weird and wear gigantic sunglasses. And like, I could make myself a big, gigantic looking, like, who is that person? I don't know who that is, but that must be somebody. Like, I can do that, or I can go to Barney's with my mom and be dressed like a schlub and no one recognizes me or thinks like that I am somebody because I don't look like somebody. I just look like, like I'm my mom's, I don't know, bratty teenage daughter who she's dragging to Barney's, like, and I'm like, that's great. Perfect.
It's got to be weird. I don't know. I love trying to imagine what it would be like to be other people, just because it's fun. And but imagining what it would be like to be you, it sounds emotionally like it would be really hard to have boundaries that people respect, like in the world. I don't know.
Yeah. It's, it, I like, I think each person is really different. I know lots of people who are recognizable, famous people, whatever. Everyone does it differently. I am friends with all the kids I grew up with. I'm super close with my family, my cousins. My girlfriend, I call her a normie. She hates that, but like I'm very drawn and attracted to people who are not in the public eye. I feel exhausted by the idea of celebrity and fame. I don't want to be chased. I don't want to have to hide. I want to go to the doctor and get a pap smear and just feel normal discomfort, not like I'm like, I have a super famous rich vagina or something. Like I, I, I really enjoy my life. I think Tegan and I have we have made an effort to try to control our success in a very specific way because I just want to be normal. I just want to have a career that I love, and I want to make art, and I want to be creative, and I want to be surrounded by people who love me for me and not because I'm famous. And I also want to be around people who also have managed their energy in a very specific way. Like I feel I'm not like trying to judge anyone, but like I don't necessarily want to like roll with a group of people who are like on 11 all the time. Like I
Mm-hmm.
like sort of blending in and just being normal. But but that doesn't mean it's not exhausting. And there is this kind of there's always running in the background is this kind of program in my mind of like, yes, I know at any time someone could be watching me or thinking about me or, filing away information that they may use later. Like I am the biggest over tipper because I'm terrified someone's going to be like, one of those Tegan and Sara people came in and they're so cheap, like,
Oh,
I'm
that's
like,
so funny.
but I just feel like I constantly overcompensate because I am terrified that someone's going to be like, they're the worst. But trying to tie this back into healthcare, it's weird, like, as I'm talking to you, because it's like, I really don't think about it in that context very often, because I really do feel like there is this, like you said this earlier, there's this code of conduct that I just sort of assume is in place when I'm with a healthcare or mental health care professional. I trust that my doctor is like, if they're talking about me, which I'm a narcissist, so it's like, I mean, of course I want my doctor to be talking about my vagina. Like, I want my massage therapist to be like, you will not believe who I was giving a massage to today. Please don't tell anyone. But like, he's fit, man. She is like great. Like, I can't help it, like, but only to a small, private group of people. Like, I don't want my therapist like on blast, talking about me. But I also sort of secretly am like, she's talking about me, right? Like, I'm awesome. Like, she must go home and tell people. God, Sarah's fascinating in therapy. Like, it's confusing,
Yeah, she's probably not. If she's a good therapist, she's not telling anyone even that she sees you, and it's
not even
killing her
one
inside.
person. Come on.
No,
I don't believe.
Oh my God.
Maybe it's
no. Even when I worked in hospice, if I took care of anyone who was famous, that will die with me. Like, you tell
you're a
no
better
one.
person than I am. That's why I'm not. That is why I'm not a hospice nurse, because I couldn't help it. I mean, I feel like I'm not necessarily that great with secrets, but I would only be telling
a small circle, right?
Circle of people. So, but like, yeah, I don't know. It's like, it's very weird. It's this sort of, I mean, it's like, I mean, okay, all joking aside, I do want my therapist and my doctor to not talk about me, but I want them to be desperately wanting to talk about me.
There you go. And that's where they're at. I bet you anything that is where they're at, where it's like killing them. So it's funny because I know like nobody famous at all. Like, really, I'm so much a nobody. I'm an academic. I'm super boring. I'm a Boy Scout leader. Like, my life is pretty generically blah, but happy, but blah. And so I was telling two guys who are my age, and I'm 45, 46. I'm 46. And so they're my age, and I'm telling them, I have to tell you something really cool. I am interviewing Sara from Tegan and Sara for my podcast, and I was so excited, right? So excited. But they're guys my age. They're straight guys my age, and they knew of you guys, but they didn't know you, like, really know you. And so I was texting them. I was trying to convince them. It was really funny of like how amazing you guys were, because they knew you a little bit, but they knew the Lego song. They didn't know anything else. So it was like, no, you don't understand. Tegan and Sara, they're like catnip to lesbians. And then they both went, oh my God, okay, I get it now. So we had this whole exchange, but it was so funny because I realized for myself, I really wanted them to know that I was interviewing you. I have no idea why, but I was really excited. But if you were my patient, yeah, I wouldn't tell a living soul.
Well, okay, but this is an interesting thing, right? Like, I think even for me, like, I strongly identify with your position, because I mean, there's certainly been lots of times in my life where I'm having a conversation with or hanging out with someone who is famous or someone I admire, and there's something exciting about sharing that information with people. I mean, and that's, I think, because I can access that feeling so organically and naturally, I have such empathy for people when they have that about me, because
so if they do talk about your super famous vagina, you're going to give them a pass.
Well, this is the thing.
If they're only telling that small circle.
I mean, I think so, because, I mean, not necessarily about my vagina, but I definitely think, like, I mean, I'm thinking of the last time I got like excited to meet someone, to see someone, and it was on an airplane. Last summer, I was sitting next to Naomi Klein, who is a writer and activist.
Very cool.
That I love, like, that has been extremely influential on my life. I mean, and I was sitting next to her on a flight from Ottawa to Los Angeles, and I was sitting in my seat, like, thinking to myself, she was sitting right next to me, and I was like, I have to say something to her. I don't want to, she's not going to recognize me, but I'm recognizing her and I need to say something to her. And that urge, like that, just like boiling over, I have to do this. I know it's going to be awkward. It's not going to be, she's not going to be thrilled at being interrupted and having to like talk to me, but I'm going to do it anyway. Like that is such a natural thing. And it's like, and I don't blame people for feeling that or wanting that. And like, who Naomi Klein is. Lots of people, when we had a lovely conversation, we took a picture. She wanted to take the picture. I was like, yes, great. I didn't have to ask. And I tell people that story all the time. And like, it's, to me, she is like world famous international writing activist superstar. Yeah. To most of the people in my life, people were like, who's that now? And I'm like, she wrote No Logo. Like I have to kind of explain it a little bit. And they're like, cool. Like there's not, if I was like, I sat next to Lady Gaga and we like shared cat pictures or something, people would be like, holy shit. But like, for me, meeting Naomi Klein and sitting next to her was like a real, like, oh my God moment. I did have a seriously horrible hangover. And after like an hour of talking to her, I was like, I have to put my headphones on because I feel like I've suffered kind of brain damage. And I have been working at like 10 to try to keep up with you and sound hard. And now I need to go back to just watching like The Good Wife. So bye.
That is so funny. Yeah. But it's good to know that everybody experiences that urge to kind of share and connect. One of the things I see, so I follow you guys on Instagram, and you have a carefully curated window into your life that you share with fans that feels very personal. That does make me realize I think you have a touch of OCD because your place is always so clean. Oh my God, you could eat off of your floor. So you have cats and there's like everything's clean all the time. And I don't know if that's your place or Tegan's place, but it's like super clean, but you're sharing with people. Is there ever times when you're thinking about what you share?
Yeah.
Is there this lens of like, oh my God, my place looks like crap. I can't really be like tweeting out pictures of, I don't know. I was just curious. The unrelated to healthcare, but
the answer to all of that is that yes, I do probably have a touch of OCD. And yeah, I think about it all the time. And I think, this is going to sound sort of harsh, but like, I think we are very good at giving people a sense of, oh, we're going to give you this glimpse into our lives, but it's very strategic in the sense that it's like, there is a 95% of me, my life, who I am, what I am, that I keep extremely close and private. And then there's this part of me that I'm like completely fine with exploiting because I know that people want to see something and people need to know something. And so, as social media has become such an integrated part of branding and bands and careers and just life in general, I think we work really hard to protect and sort of keep sacred a huge chunk of who we are. That, like putting up, this like these images of the cats or like my house or whatever. It's like, yeah, it's kind of my house. It's a rental because I'm like working in LA. Like I don't feel like it's super personal. Like I don't put up I've never put up pictures or images of my place in Vancouver or when I lived in Montreal. Like I don't, I'm really careful about what I share because I want it to be mine and I want it to be.
That's good.
And, and it's really hard. It's like, I think about this a lot about clothes. Like Tegan and I wear something and then people buy those clothes. They're like, I want to look like them. Or people see us, see our tattoos and then they actually go and get our tattoos. And it's tough things because it's like, that's my identity. Those are my things. That's my sort of like self-harming scar of some kind of terrible situation, and I got it tattooed onto my body as a memory, and now you have it. Like I don't understand, like so I've had to kind of like figure out without judgment in a way, like I have to accept that is going to happen. And so instead I sort of protect things that that I don't want other people to know about, or it's not people's business, or I don't want them to I don't want them to take those things and make them theirs. And so the things that we put on our social media are things that I'm like, I don't really care. So the cats on our social media are my cats, and Tegan and I don't live together. So it's my house, my cats. And I think Tegan thinks it's sometimes weird that I'll put those, like I think Tegan thinks that they're very intimate images in the sense that she's like, yeah, I don't really want people to look at my couch or, whatever it is. And for me, it's actually been a wonderful shield, because where I
Mm-hmm.
struggled to figure out what I was going to put up on social media a lot of times, now I'm just like, here, look at my cat. Like I don't feel like I have to
Right.
search for, okay, what will, like, I did it with books for a long time. I don't want to share a lot about my life, but you know what I love? Oh, I love this book. I love this author. I love this story. I connected to this thing. Why don't you read it and see if you can find a connection for yourself there? And I think I that's how I see the cats. They're not consenting to be on my social media, but they're mine and I own them, so I can do whatever I want with them.
Mm-hmm.
And they're my cats, and so they don't really give anything away.
Well, and you can't go wrong with a cat
No,
picture.
people love
You
cats.
really can't. I mean, it's sharing. People love cats. It's interesting. You had something on Instagram with your mom playing piano, and I think of all of the things that I've ever seen on your social media. I don't want it to sound like I'm a social media stalker, because I'm not. I'm rarely on Instagram, and I put out. I don't even know what the word is. It's not tweeted out, but whatever the word is for putting out an Instagram picture, I
It's
think I've only
grand.
posted like
You
10.
say, I
Thank you, grammed. I'm feeling very old now. I'm turning into an old
know.
person. But I when I saw your mom playing piano, in many ways that seemed like the most
Yeah.
personal of the Instagram grams. I sound like I'm 87 years old. Um, but I like the way that you share without sharing
Yeah.
everything. With people emulating what you do, and this does bring it back to healthcare, I promise, is your work with Queer Health Access and all of the work that you're doing around really ensuring that there's better care for queer people. My hope is that young people and fans will emulate your activism, because that is one of the most amazing things about you and Tegan. You and I've met at a Queer Health Access convening. And the thing that I took away from that I was so impressed with, was how much you get it and you care about this. And this isn't just about slapping your name on a cause. You are deeply, deeply engaged in trying to improve queer healthcare. If there were something you could say to fans about what you want them to do, or what your hope for them in terms of their activism around queer healthcare, what would it
You know,
be?
I mean, specifically around healthcare, what I think is really interesting, and the foundation that Tegan and I started, and a lot of the work that we're doing, um, it extends beyond the United States, but specifically around healthcare in the United States, I'm finding it to be really fascinating to try to understand how complicated it is. It's not just healthcare, it's insurance companies, and it's about, who has access and who doesn't have access, and where does research go. And, one day you can have one experience and the next day you can have a totally different experience. And how do we sort of like address all of these issues that sort of play a huge role in determining whether or not someone even feels that they have enough value to go to the doctor as a person. It's not even, do you have health insurance? We're starting to realize that a lot of people in our community don't even think they deserve it, and that they don't feel good about their
Mm-hmm.
bodies enough to even want to go out and proactively find healthcare, or invest in their long-term health and mental care. And that was very eye-opening for me, because while I tend to avoid the doctor and I'm annoyed by the experience and all of these things, I still go, and I still want to be healthy, and I don't smoke, and I work out, and I try to eat healthy, and like I guess, even though I think of myself as being kind of mean to myself sometimes, I actually really care about myself, and I want to lead a healthy life, and I feel I deserve a healthy life, and I think that it is my right to be able to get access to the doctor. And when I really think about what is probably one of the most pressing issues in our community, I realize it's that a lot of people don't even have that. They don't even have that sense of like, I should get this. This is for me. I want to be healthy.
Mm-hmm.
And and I think we really sort of saw that firsthand with our fan base. We receive letters and we receive correspondence from people who write pages and pages and pages about their own minds and their bodies and the experiences that they're having, and they're so transparent, and they tell us everything that's going on. And over 18 years, you start to pick up patterns, and it's like everybody's story is their own, but it's also like, wow, this is a very common story, like that that you were treated this way, or that you're afraid, or that you went somewhere and thought you were going to be treated with respect and you were taken advantage of at your most vulnerable, or, whatever it is. So I do really care about this. And I really feel as though while there are many, many amazing people working in healthcare who want to make things better for our community, there are barriers that need to be removed, and there are ways to do it. And I don't know if we're going to have, I don't know if we're going to be able to do it, but I definitely am enjoying and feeling like motivated and inspired to participate. And that means, working with people who maybe haven't been directly involved with trying to think about and solve this problem. So right now, with Queer Health Access, I really care about healthcare, and also figuring out if there are ways through technology and working with people who are, who are used to reaching people in other areas, if they can help us make these links and make these communities better, better connected. Specifically right now, we're really trying to figure out how to link LGBTQ healthcare practitioners and doctors and people working in mental health care. We want to connect those people with the community at large in North America who want to see doctors who are LGBTQ or LGBTQ culturally competent. And when we first started working on it, I was like, this is an easy problem. We know exactly who the patient is. We know exactly who the healthcare practitioner is, and we want to connect them. And it's been amazing to me how actually complicated it is to do that.
So what is the website for Queer Health Access?
It's queerhealthaccess.com. And we are sort of like mid-swing right now, working on a project that I think is going to be really exciting and will hopefully address some of the things that I'm talking about. But I think what I realize about, this work and our community is that it's not like we have a 6-month plan and we're going to fix this problem and then it's going to be over. I think that, if this new government in the States is any indication, we have to be vigilant. There are going to be constant changes and blocks and barriers and forces that want to stop queer people from having access to things and having and trying to take things away from us. And so I look at this as lifelong work. This isn't something that I'm just interested in right now. I sort of look at it like this will be the work that I do for the rest of my life.
And it'll be the work, I think, that will you'll get remembered for, in addition to your music, and maybe even more so than your music, given how much progress I think you can make in this area with your leadership. So I really appreciate you coming on the show.
Oh my God, I love being on the show. I could probably talk another hour about all of it. And like, it's so nice not to have to talk about like music. It's so nice not to have to like answer questions about my writing process. Like, I'm just like, yay, this is awesome.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Take care and good luck with everything that you're doing with the Tegan and Sara Foundation and Queer Health Access.
Thank you so much.
Thanks. You've been listening to M-Dash, the healthcare podcast that gives you pause. For show notes and information about other episodes on the show, visit www.em-podcast.com.